Case study number 3, take 8. Okay, sorry, this for some reason will not upload. I keep getting these error messages. I can't airdrop it, so I'm trying a new device. Hopefully this works. I'm gonna try to speed through this because this video has been 14, 16 minutes long just for it not to upload, error, and stuff. I've tried it to record it on Canva, still won't work. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's try to get this done, and hopefully this all works out. So we're back with our client, who is a 4-year-old male with an autism diagnosis with a strong tactic and demanding repertoire. He shows deficits in his social and group interactions with barriers that affect his school readiness, such as his engagement in inappropriate language, aggression, tantrum, property destruction, flopping, elopement, and that is negatively reinforced and maintained by escape from demands and to gain access to attention and tangibles. For instructional purposes, we will be focused on his inappropriate language. We have discussed his other behaviors and why they're socially significant, and the reactive measures that have been taken. But just a reminder, these behaviors are socially significant because there's a medical necessity to treat him so that he can be successful in the least restrictive environment. He cannot currently be successful in environments such as school or work due to his maladaptive behaviors, because you cannot tell the teacher to STFU because they said it's time to do math or do anything. Okay, so first we're going to start talking about how we would train an RBT to treat this client, right? And that will be utilizing an evidence-based practice called behavior skill training. Now, behavior skill training is broken down into 6 steps, which in my opinion, I always say it's just 4 because the last 2 is, more feedback and repeating, but it's 6 steps. So the first step is providing instructions that include the rationale and operation definition of the skill. So for this example, the rationale is that we are a data-driven, function-based treatment practitioner system. So basically, we are trying to address the function of these behaviors, and we're defining what we're doing at, ABA, the reactive measures, etc. Now, this would be written down in the BIP, or the behavior intervention plan. Now, that is where you provide the clear description and instructions of what to do, the reactive measures, the operation definitions, and it's just written out and easy to understand for an RBT. And that's also why we will demonstrate and model the skills needed, such as blocking, removal, token economy, the reinforcement, whatever it looks like, right? And then you require the trainee to practice or role play. So like even when you're demonstrating it, that can be done in a role play setting, or, so that when they're practicing, that can be done in a role play setting. Or whether it's because, if you're in a live situation, it's may not be feasible to be like, okay, here, cursing me again. I need to make sure I do this correctly, right? You want to capture that moment in that moment to make sure you're providing the proper reductions and interventions, so that you're not reinforcing it. And then, after you role play it, you get the feedback, then you just rinse and repeat. Earlier, I provided the example of how I believe, another example of how behavior skill training is such a wide variety, how I can teach a wide variety of skills. And I utilize school, or like, this class, this course, or ABA, right? Like getting the ABA certificate, I guess you'd say, but we can use this course as an example as well. So providing instructions, including the rationale and operational definition of the skill. So for, instructional purposes, like the skill is doing assignments, completing assignments, turning in work, whatever. And providing a clear description of, the skill. The syllabus literally outlines everything we're going to do in the semester, right? So that's basically the same thing as, your behavior plan, right? Like it tells you what you're going to do. It tells you your grade. It tells you the stuff that you're going to need. It's all there. And then, demonstrate and modeling a skill. The example I gave for that is how, the teachers will often provide videos or, PowerPoints or something like that in the module to help you understand the curriculum. The role play is the assignments, the practice, I guess you'd say, right? It's the assignments that we do to get us a better feel to understand the technicalities of what we're being taught. And then the feedback, the comments. Every time we turn in an assignment, the teacher comments. Sometimes there's discussion of what we can do better, how we can fix it, maybe even a chance to do it again, which leads us into the next one of, rinse and repeat, right? And, that can look many ways. Like they allow you to turn the assignment in again, or you fail that class and you have to take it again. But it's a broader example of how behavior skills training can, work to, that advantage. Like, and we'll talk more about how it can, it's a wide, broader thing. It doesn't have to be such like this nit and gritty, focal, foundational, oh, it has to be done this way kind of thing. Like, when you stop and think about the way a lot of things operate in ABA, a lot of it's based on this because, a lot of trainings can be based on even, when the trainer is training a trainer. Yeah, when the company is training a new trainer, they can use behavior skill training. So it's stuff like that, right? It doesn't always have to be directly oriented to like doing DTT or, behavior reductions. But once again, sake of time, possible not loading. So we're going to move on. So next, we're going to talk about the performance and how to, do diagnostics to ensure, performance, make sure that clients are, doing well, interventions to remediate things like that, providing feedback, for to make sure that interventions are, going smoothly. So first, what we have is a performance diagnostic checklist. And what that is used for is when a company wants to rectify any given problem, right? Like anytime there is a specific organizational task that needs to be done for a job, like a specific job, a PDC is useful. Now, but for us, we work in direct care, right? Like, we're working with, children with autism or, sometimes teenagers or what have you, but we're working with people, individuals. So, we would want to use something a little bit more direct, like, that focuses heavily on specific skills or unique problems, such as behavior reduction, DTT, or, the parents not implementing, the caregiver training that you guys have been talking about, right? So a PDCHS, which is a performance diagnostic of human services, is what we would utilize there. Now, literally, they're about the same thing, except one is based more for the organization. The other is based more for individuals who are focusing on human services or direct care, right? So like one is things like, oh, you're late to work. And the other one is making sure that a person is doing DTT well enough so that it is not that it's, directly correlating to the client's needs and well-being, I guess you'd say, right? So, oh, you're late to work. That's affecting our bottom line. You're not performing DTT well. You're affecting this client's development and progression. So I guess that's a good way to look at it, right? Like one is more so worried about the client. The other is focused more on performance within an organization, like quality assurance kind of thing. So, we'll talk about the steps. There are 4 steps. First is training, making sure that RBT understands the knowledge, the information of what it means to run a session. Are you pairing? Do you understand the reinforcement interval? Do you understand the break interval? Do you understand how to implement his token economy, right? Like do you like training them to understand or to make sure that they have the knowledge in completing the tasks, that you've assigned. Then you have task clarification and prompting, right? It's essentially the same thing as operationally defining, what's happening and the feedback, right? So the prompting is essentially feedback. Task clarification is operationally defining what, the skill, the problem, what have you at hand. So in this regard, making sure that they understand the reactive measures when he engages in inappropriate behaviors or, maladaptive behaviors, inappropriate language. And then, you're prompting, giving feedback to ensure that they're doing, that correctly. And then, you have the resource materials and, processes. Do they have what they need? That's do they have the iPad? Do they have the token board, right? Do they have all the tokens? If you're doing receptive ID, do you have stimuli, right? Like, do you have the cat, the dog, the car, what have you, et cetera, et cetera. So then you have performance, consequences, and efforts and completion. So now this one, it's long or whatever, but essentially it encompasses in how does you understanding how you performing the intervention poorly or well affects the client, right? And how your being affects that, right? So like if you're stressed and you don't feel like doing your job, how does that affect the client? Because now you don't want to do the intervention. Your client is cussing up a storm, beating on another client. How does that affect them? They're getting away with it. They're obtaining tangible. They're getting attention, right? Like because you aren't intervening, because you aren't doing your job, how is that affecting this client's repertoire, their development, things like that? And then, like I said, even on that other end, you being stressed, like, the supervisor making sure that, you're taken care of, you're not burnt out. Working with these high behavioral clients can be stressful sometimes. So maybe you need a break. Maybe you need to go work with another client, right? But at the same time, you got, because you have to make sure like your interpersonal relationship, your problems, et cetera, aren't affecting. This is also an ethical dilemma, but it's not affecting the client, because once again, the focus here is on the human services, right? The direct care staff. So now into the case study question, right? So I was a little bit confused about this at first. So, I made sure I had like an open discussion about this with my supervisor. And, just real quick, some of the responses that she gave was, she made a joke. She's like, oh, when you asked me this, I immediately thought about the weather, meteorology, methodology, whatever. Bad joke, I guess. Probably stale now after 7 recordings, but whatever. Unfortunately, she said that there's only the 80% or higher to make sure that a skill is adequate, right? For reliability and stuff like that. But for validity, she said, and when we talked about this, it sounded, like I said, it sounded a lot like behavioral skills training. And I don't know, this semester, I've just developed this appreciation for knowing what that is, how it operates, and, its many uses. But essentially, she said that, she'll cold probe, she'll ask some questions, see if they even read the information that she wrote, because we've all experienced where they kind of just walk in like, oh, I know how to deal with tantrums or whatever, right? But every intervention isn't the same. Every client isn't the same. And then, periodically she will come in and make sure, she's supervising, that she's seeing a substantial amount of accurate demonstrations of whatever the skill is. And oftentimes, if there's a new RBT working, she'll make sure she's supervising so that she can show them what to do. And speaking specifically, and so we are using this specific client, but in the example that when I had the discussion with her, she referred to another client that has a tracker for how many holds that client had, or you had to use on that client during the session. So, and for that case, she would supervise if there was a new RBT to make sure that they understood how those holds looked, and what was appropriate for this setting, or, what have you. So, like I said, when we talked about it, it sounded a lot like behavioral skill training, just, without her actually saying it, which I appreciated, because it didn't feel like she was trying to give me what you were looking for, even though she also asked me to ask you if that was what you were looking for. But once again, that could have been user error, and I explained the prompt wrong. So we made great time this time. So hopefully this works. And if not, I will see you for take 8. Thank you.